welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, and it is time for a 7 on Sunday topic. The first topic of August. So this topic is books I will never read again. So most of these, actually all of these, I do not have anymore in my possession for the very reason of their books I'll never read again. But just for the record, not all the books that I'll never read again are books that are bad, and I did enjoy them. I'm glad I read them. I don't regret reading them. There's a couple of these I do regret reading, but there are a lot of them that it's more like I only need to read them once, and I don't feel the desire to read them again. Even though I enjoyed them. In fact, some of these books will be on one of the topics for August. That's the hardest / heaviest books you've read. And that's basically the reason why these books, I will never read them again. Okay, so the first one, number 1, is High Rise by J.G. Ballard. Now, as I said before, I picked this one up because Tom Hiddleston stars in the movie adaptation. And I attempted to watch the movie, but then when it came on HBO, but then I decided that let me just when I saw the book at the roast office, I was like, let me just read the book first. And then I'll eventually watch the movie when it comes on TV again, like on one of the streaming networks. Whichever one we have, which is HBO or Netflix. Well, actually at the moment we don't have Netflix, but I'm hoping we'll get it back soon. So I haven't seen it yet. And it also, but anyway, this is basically a very dark story about this guy who moves into this apartment complex. It takes place in London, England, built by this famous architect who I believe Jeremy Irons plays the character in the movie adaptation. But it is the way it's designed is so that these people never feel the need to leave because everything they need is in the apartment complex. Like there's a gym, there's 2 pools, a family pool and then a pool for the adults, and then there's like shopping areas like malls and stuff, and not just in a grocery store. So it's designed so you don't ever feel the need to leave unless you happen to have a job where it's outside the apartment complex. It's designed for both families and young people or like single people who just want to, need a new place to live. And our main character is a teacher who's our semi-main character. I mean, I feel like it wasn't just from his perspective, but the first part of the book was from his point of view. And that's Tom Hiddleston's character, I believe. He is a teacher. And if I remember correctly, him and his wife got a divorce or something like that. Or it's been a few months, so I don't remember exactly, but, and while he's there, the apartment complex starts malfunctioning. And suddenly everything becomes just slowly, over time, becomes very, like, chaotic, and people become desperate and just, like, very self-centered and crazy. And as I said in my review, they revert to very primitive means. And there are people that are, like, exploiting the situation. There's one guy that's exploiting the situation by filming it and hoping to sell it to a movie studio or a studio, and it's just slowly falling. It's slowly showing the madness of these people and the ugly side of humanity, and it's just really like thought-provoking and kind of unsettling. And it's a short read. It's not that long. I did do a separate review for it if you guys are interested, and it was good. Like I said, it was really good, but at least for me anyway. but it's not one that I have the desire to read again. Like, I'm glad I read it and I enjoyed the ride, but it's just so intense and just makes you so uncomfortable that it's like, oh, okay, I read it once, I'm good. So next is something I read back in college, because this person that recommended this book series to me, or trilogy, well, now it's 4 books because the author wrote another book and published it a few years ago, although sadly the author is no longer with us, and that's Anne Rice, and a friend of a friend saw that I was into Anne Rice and was reading her Vampire Chronicles at the time, so she offered me Anne Rice's take on the Sleeping Beauty story. But what in the story, what happened is that Beauty is woken up, not by some charming, handsome, loving prince, but by a prince who he and his mother own a sex slave ring, and which involves BDSM. And it was very inappropriate, and I was not comfortable reading it. The only reason why I even attempted to read the rest of it is because it was only a trilogy at the time. I was thinking, okay, let me see if Beauty escapes from the situation. And she doesn't. And in fact, I found out in the 4th book that Anne Rice wrote is that she ends up doing her own version of it. Except she does give you choice. She gives you choice. You don't have to live this lifestyle, but you don't want it. You can walk away. But it still kind of pissed me off and made me uncomfortable, and I was so angry at the book. I know why I kept reading, because I wanted to see if if Beauty got away from this, but I should not have kept reading because I was just so uncomfortable. In fact, I don't even think I finished book 2 because I didn't even get to book 3. And it was a mistake because I love Anne Rice's writing, and I liked her Vampire Chronicle, the interview with the vampire, when I read it, and I enjoyed the Brad Pitt and what's his name? I cannot believe I can't think of his name. But the Brad Pitt with Kristen Dunst and what's his name? For some reason I can't think of his name at the moment. That version, and then I watched a little bit of the new version that's a TV show, and I thought it was pretty good. And then I like what I've read of The Witching Hour, and I'm still gonna keep reading it. But this one, especially because it was based on a fairy tale, basically from my childhood, I didn't like it. I was not comfortable with it. It pissed me off, and like I said, I shouldn't have kept going with it. I will never finish it. I will never read the last book or the 4th book. I don't care. And the BDSM is not for me. That kind of scenario is just I'm not comfortable with it. If it's your thing, that's fine. I'm not gonna, but for me, I was not comfortable with it. So I don't plan on continuing that. I will never read it again. I will read Anne Rice's other stuff, possibly. Like I am gonna read The Witching Hour, but I'm not. I'm done with. I will never touch that series again. Okay, so that was number 2. Now we're on number 3, book 3, and that is Devil in the White City. This is a nonfiction book, a true crime novel. And I thought that was really interesting. Like, I liked watching. I know a lot of people did not like. A lot of the criticisms of this book received is it felt like 2 different stories. 2 different books. Because we get the story of the Chicago World's Fair, but we also get the story of this famous serial killer whose name escapes me at the moment. Who was around during the time of the Chicago World's Fair. I thought it was I like both stories. I thought it was such an interesting exploration, and comparing those 2, like paralleling those stories, like, and the very loose link, I think, was that Erik Larson was trying to play with is that he decided to use the Chicago World's Fair, the serial killer did as an excuse to get his victims, to get all of his new victims. So it was it was like that part of the Chicago World's Fair stuff was really cool. And it was interesting to find out how this serial killer's mind worked. It was really morbidly fascinating, but at the same time, like I said, it was very uncomfortable, very unsettling. And I don't know if I would read that again. It was just so creepy and just wanting to know what he was going to do, and seeing what these people were going through, and seeing these women trust him and fall in love with him because he was so charming and good looking, and that he wooed them away from their husbands and their families. And you just want to, because as the reader, you know what he's going to do to them, what's coming, and you know what their future holds. You can't change what happened to them. You can't change the past. Of course, we don't, if you don't do the research, like, of course, I didn't do the research. I didn't know much about this famous killer, so I didn't know if anyone escaped him. But, you can't change, because this is history. This stuff really happened. And it just it unnerved me and would give me nightmares, and I'm thinking, you got so frustrated with these women for trusting this guy and abandoning their husbands, even if their husbands weren't Prince Charming or anything, even if they weren't that great. It's like, I'm still thinking, you need to stay with your husband because this guy is insane. Yes, he's charming and really, really attractive, but he's a psychopath. He's going to kill you and torture you and cut you up into tiny little pieces. It just made me really uncomfortable, and I'm glad I read it. It was a very easy read. It was something, I was trying. Like, I've liked some of the true crime that I've read. Like, I guess I've only read 2 now, and they were really intriguing. But in both cases, I sent them, I was like, okay, I read it. Now I don't want to read it ever again. I'm just glad I tried it and I liked it, but I don't need to read it again. Next is a classic, actually a German classic, Perfume by Patrick Süskind. This is about a guy who was upset, who didn't have a scent himself, did not smell. He did not have his own odor, but he had a really good sense of smell. He could smell every little thing, including the disgusting smells. The smells we didn't we are grossed out by and make us want to puke. He could smell them. But he actually was fascinated by it. He liked it. This guy. I don't remember what his name was. He was French. I'm wondering if it was maybe Jean or something. But he was obsessed with scents. And then he smells the fresh perfume smell, the first scent of a young girl, and decides to kill her so he can capture her scent and use it in perfume. Like, he's obsessed with capturing certain scents to make it a perfume, and then at one point he becomes so into it, he wants to use it on himself so that he can blend in more with society, and commit his crimes. And he's so rational about it. His logic is so insane and disturbing, but it's logic to him. It makes sense. He's rational. He rationalizes everything. And then at one point, he just being around humans drives him insane, and he ends up isolating himself and living like a wild man in a cave because he can't be around people. He doesn't like people. He hates humanity. And, which, by the way, no matter how horrible humans can be to each other, no matter the craziness, I will never hate humanity, because there's so much beauty in humanity that sometimes is covered up or hidden by the bad stuff. So I definitely did not connect with the character at all, and it was just very disturbing. And I'm glad I can say I read this and check this off my list as a classic I've read. It was very beautifully written. Like, I love the descriptions, and it was kind of intriguing and fascinating that he was so obsessed with scent and all the scents that we would take for granted, even the good ones, Not the gross, disgusting ones, but the good sense, the nice, the ones that we would like, most people like. He really appreciated them and didn't take anything for granted, any of the smells for granted. And it's kind of interesting to look at humanity through smell. You know? So, yeah. So, I'm glad I read it. It's not that long, so I was able to get through it quickly. But at least I can say it's a classic that I've read. And I know for sure I will never read it. You know, sometimes there are some situations, especially if it's a short one, that I just need to read it just to see. And, I mean, yeah, I can DNF it if I'm not interested, if I decide this is not for me. But, you know, if it's a short one, it's nice to be able to be like, okay, check off my list, I read it, now I can talk a little bit about it. Same with, like, High Rise, you know, I read it. And I can say I read it and maybe talk about it a little bit. Or if other people talk about it, I know what they're talking about, if other people are bringing it up. Okay, so next is one that I've actually reread. I read once in middle school, and then I read it a couple years, like 2 years ago. And that is Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. So this is a classic, a modern classic. And actually, a couple of years ago, there was a movie about the author writing this book. About J.D. Salinger. That came out recently. I don't know if it was a good movie or not. I'd be curious to watch it either way. And I did read one of his other works. I haven't read his 9 stories yet, the collection of 9 stories, but I did read Franny and Zooey. I don't know if it's Zooey or Zoe. Because it looks like Zooey, but I think I have still heard it pronounced Zoe. But, so this is a kind of one of those stream of consciousness kind of story where you have this kid, Holden Caulfield. He's just been kicked out of it. He's, you know, from a very rich family, you know, rich parents. And he had a brother who, I don't know if the brother, you know, I can't remember how the brother died, if he killed himself or if he just died. I can't remember. I want to say he might have killed himself. But he also has and then he also has a brother, you know, a little sister, and he has gotten kicked out of another prestigious prep school, and he's right now, because he's afraid to go home and tell his parents, he decides to walk around New York, and we just hear his thoughts as he goes throughout the rest of his evening exploring New York. He spends time with this older woman at one point. He tries to go into these clubs, and he expresses his thoughts about the people that he went to school, his peers, his relationship with his sister. He talks about his brother. And I appreciate the story, and I probably am not giving enough credit when I rated it. It's, you know, and yeah, I get that Holden is going through a sort of depression. He's not in a great state of mind. He could probably get benefit from a counselor or a therapist. I'm actually talking to him, not talking down to him, but talking with him and actually trying to understand him and not force anything on him. Like, I mean, I think this was written in the 1950s, so I don't know how much he would benefit from that, because I'm sure, you know, back then, I don't think they would have understood this. Like, now, he could benefit from BetterHelp, which is, you know, therapy that I've been hear a lot about, that's advertised a lot on YouTube. But I don't know if he would if he went to therapy, though, I don't know if he would get the actual genuine help he needs. But anyway, I just didn't connect with it. And I gotta admit, there were times when I was annoyed by Holden, you know, I kind of rolled my eyes. And yes, I understand what he's going through, so I don't need to lecture about, well, you don't understand, because I do. I get it. He's going through, like I said, he's going through depression, and there's a reason he's cynical and bitter and just, like, angry at the world. And I did really like his relationship with his sister Phoebe. I thought that was really sweet. But I didn't connect with his character. And that's probably why I was kind of annoyed, because I felt no connection to him. I was very frustrated with him, and I get it, but I don't have the same feelings he does about the world. because I've been very fortunate in my life. So yes, I am very fortunate. I'm lucky. I get that. So, and I understand that probably is the reason why I don't connect with this book. I respect it. I appreciate its existence, and I've read it twice now. So, I just, I mean, this is one that maybe I'll read again one day. I don't know, but most likely never again. Like, I don't need to. I get it. I appreciate it. And, I think it's probably maybe a book that Harrison or Daniel will read in the future when they're in that age category, little middle school, high school level. Maybe they'll read it because I know my sister has it. I think she does. I think they have it on their shelf. I'll have to check. But I know they do have the other J.D. Salinger book, Franny and Zoe. Or Zoe, but I don't know if you're supposed to say it's Zoe or Zooey. It looks like Zooey. So maybe they'll connect with it better than I will. It was a very easy read too. It was not that hard. Even though I felt like it was kind of very stream of consciousness, it wasn't too hard to read. Okay, so next is one that I actually listened to an audiobook, which I definitely recommend for this, considering the format of the story. It's a, it's like a crime podcast, like a Dateline story, but in a, fictional form, in a, story format. So you have, and it is Courtney Summers is Sadie, which I think she recently published another book a couple years ago. But this is kind of a true crime or it's not true crime, it's fiction, but it's kind of set up like a true crime, where our main character is looking for the guy who kidnapped and killed her sister, and she ends up going missing herself. And so half the story is told in podcast form, but then the other half of the story is told where she is telling, where we get the story playing out of her going to find this guy who killed her sister. And we have but we also have the podcaster interviewing all these people about her and trying to see if he can find her. And it is really good. It's very engaging, very intense, and again, another unsettling story. As you can see, there's a pattern that books I'll probably never read again. Like I said, I think listening to it via audio is the best format because it's kind of half the story's told like a podcast. So I haven't looked at the book before, the physical copy, so I don't know what that looks like. Now in this case, I also don't really relate to the main character, but I just, I like this a little bit more than the other one, in the Catcher in the Rye. And maybe because I connected, even though I don't connect exactly with her, I think the whole sister thing, I think I more, relate more to that, being a sister of a sister, because, if something happened to my sister, I think I would be obsessed too. But, I don't know if I would be brave enough to go talk to people and go risk my life, and it would be difficult. I would have to take a bus and taxi a lot too. But yeah, I think it was really good. It was a very heartbreaking story, very gritty, very dark, but still really good. Okay, so the last one is one that, he's a beloved author on BookTube, and I agree his writing is great. I love the writing. And I'm surprised I got through this book because it's a long one. But I read it because it was like, I'm in it to win it. I'm in it to read, I need to finish. I'm going to read this and I'm going to finish it. And that is 1Q84 by Haruki Murakami. I have still heard people like Emmy say his name all the time. Or Caroline Marie say his name, but I still cannot pronounce it myself. But this was kind of his take on 1984 by George Orwell. You have a man and a woman It's set in Japan, I think. And you have, I don't even remember the main character names, but you have Tango is the guy. He's a teacher. He's also helping one of his students get her book published, if I remember correctly, like his young student, who's this young 17-year-old girl, and she's apparently really beautiful, and everyone's attracted to her for some reason. I mean, and then you have our main character, whose name I do not remember. I don't know why I remember his name, but not hers. And she had a weird, I remember her job being really weird and unique. Like, I don't know what she, and both of them can tell something's different about the world or something. Like it's not exactly right, which the whole otherworldly aspect or the not rightness is very subtle. There's like little things that are different, which I thought that was interesting. Especially, I'm used to like really big differences in a story like that. And so at the time I was a little disappointed, but thinking back, it was an interesting take. Like I said, I like his writing style, and for some reason I was engaged in the story briefly. I didn't like how the main female lead was portrayed. I was not comfortable with that. She was very sexified and just very, like, I feel like she didn't have a lot of emotions. And, of course the guy was having disgusting, piggish thoughts that I was not into, and like I said, and I never really thought about the exploitation of 17-year-old girls until now, until I started watching Emily Fox's channel and her talking about it and pointed it out. The sexifying of them, and it's like, really, like is this a fetish or something? It was just weird. And like, I just, it was just a very weird story, and it was super long, and which this is his longest work, I think, although it's in multiple volumes, so maybe it was, and I think it's in other parts of the world it's been published as 2 different books, but in America it's one big volume, one big book. So it took me a long time to read, and so I am not comfortable with it. I do not plan to read it again, and it's already gone. Like I said, I don't have any of these books to show you guys because they were already donated and went somewhere at some point. And I just have no interest in reading it again. I don't know if I'll ever read Haruki Murakami. I mean, I've heard different opinions. Like a lot of people love him. But from what Emily Fox said, granted, I know that people will say, oh, you should read it for yourself before you decide. But, considering some of the stuff she says that are in the book, like, can you blame? I mean, you can't really blame someone for not wanting to read even his work, he has good writing and interesting stories, it sounds like. But yeah, so those are the books I will never read again. Would love to know what the books you'll never read again. Is there any books that you feel like you read once or more, maybe even more than once, and you're like, okay, I'm done, I don't need to read this again? What are some of those books? Please feel free to share them. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Click subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell notification button if you want to be notified about my latest videos. And I hope you enjoyed your reading, and I will talk to you all later. Alright, bye!